On this episode of Double Nickel Road Trip, join me, Eddie George, and Lexi as we trek from Spokane, Washington to Bend, Oregon, and then on to Olympia National Park.
Subscribe below.
On the last episode of Double Nickel Road Trip, I picked up my new Bernese Mountain Dog puppy, EddieGeorge, in Boise, Idaho. EddieGeorge and I spent the next 2 days getting acquainted as I drove Lexi northbound up the western panhandle of Idaho. We traveled through towns such as Donnelly, McCall, Riggs, and Moscow before finally reaching Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint in the northern panhandle. And just a half a mile west of Coeur d'Alene lies the city of Spokane, Washington, the new hometown of my good friends Scott and Chelsea. And as luck would have it, they offered me and EddieGeorge to stay at their home while they were out of town.
Come here, Eddie. Come see Papa. Come see Papa.
EddieGeorge and I made ourselves at home. He had an accident or two. I raided the refrigerator. The next morning we woke up, had a great breakfast, a quick play in the backyard, and then we pointed Lexi southwest towards Bend. Hey Double Nickel crew, I'm in Golden Dale, Washington, just north of the Oregon border. Right here you can see Eddie is having his dinner.
There is Mount Adams. It's a stratovolcano. And then over here,
That's all gone. That's all gone. There's nothing in there. There's none in there. While back in Spokane, I did a little research on my Gaia GPS app and found a cool campground right on the banks of the Columbia River. I hope the view is spectacular when I wake up.
stay. Stay.
Last night was EddieGeorge's first in the Sky Camp, and he did absolutely great. The morning greeted us with a tremendous view of the state of Oregon across the mighty Columbia. While gazing down the Columbia River towards the Pacific Ocean, Lewis and Clark and their glorious expedition across our great nation came to mind. I can only imagine the sense of purpose and accomplishment that filled their hearts and the thrill and passion that ran through their veins. And although my adventure is not nearly as arduous as Lewis and Clark's, joy does fill my heart as I have now set foot in all 48 lower states. The weather in Bend was just like Coeur d'Alene in the last episode of Double Nickel Road Trip, in the 50s and raining. But I knew that if I went up to Mount Bachelor, I would get tons of snow for EddieGeorge. And wow, I wasn't wrong. Mount Bachelor gets up to 600 inches of snow annually. We stayed 2 nights at this epic location in Deschutes National Forest. EddieGeorge sure loved the snow. It was time to leave Bend and make tracks towards Seattle. But first, we decided to pass Mount Hood at Timberline Lodge, and then we stayed at a rest area at Hood River.
I stop in Oregon, and I'm sleeping on Papa because he's a big pillow. He's a big pillow.
Our next goal was to head to Olympia National Park, but not before visiting friends in Wenatchee and making base camp at my cousin's home in Seattle Metro. I was disappointed to find the gates at Olympia National Park were still closed for the season. At least they were at this remote location. So EddieGeorge and I left Lexi behind and hiked about a mile into the park's boundary and took a seat right next to this river. Hey, Double Nickel Crew, I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you join us on the next as we make our way from Seattle Metro all the way to Bozeman, Montana and Big Sky Mountain Resort. And it's my greatest wish that this episode has earned your subscription. If so, please consider subscribing and liking and sharing with a friend.